Da, 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 da. That's all rolling. Everything looks good. Hey, I better open the Bible. That's right. That's what the part I didn't do yet. All right, that's a good start. All right, you ready, Eli? Ready online? All right. Today is Wednesday, November 29th, 2023, and this is my little Bible study, and we're working our book of Revelation again, chapter 9. We made it all the way back to chapter 9 once again. All right. All right, you two, be good over there in the corner. All right. Now, tonight we're going to be working chapter 9. Now, chapter 9 has some interesting stuff in it. As a matter of fact, out of the whole book of Revelation, you can pretty much teach the whole book out of chapter 9, or at least you can get at least a really good overview just based on it. Gives you a couple of detail things, and it's the detail things that I want to hit. Pretty much one of them is the timeline. Now, I want to pick it up, not in the book of Revelation chapter 9, but tonight I want to pick it up in Mark chapter 13.
Now?
Yep. And I'm going to look something up for the elect. Apostrophe. Say. All right. Okay, we're going to be working the time. How long does this whole book of Revelation, how long does it take to unfold? From when to when? All right. First I want to cover is where it says that he's going to shorten the days. In Mark chapter 13, verse 20, and then we're going to go to Matthew chapter 24, verse 22. Or 24, we'll pick it up somewhere right in there. But in 13:20 it says, "And except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he has chosen," that goes all the way back to last week, all right, "he has shortened the days." All right, now Matthew in chapter, the apocalypse chapters in the New Testament are Luke 21, Matthew 24, and Mark 13. All right, and then the other apostle John, he gets the whole book of Revelation because he's the penman for it. Okay, now here's where you get the promise to shorten the days. But now I want to focus in on exactly what he's talking about. And the way you do that is you go back to chapter 15. Or, excuse me, to verse 15 of chapter 24 of Matthew. All right, where we pick it up with the subject. Now, what was going on in the first 15 verses, that's where all the apostles, or not all of them, but a good chunk of them come to him and say, look at these buildings here in the temple. How grand they are and these things like that. And he goes, that's what he tells them, there's not going to be, at the second advent, when he returns, there's not going to be one stone left top of another. All right. And it's right after that where he goes in and he says, the United States will lose a couple of towers, a bunch of people will die. Then you over here where they fight the king of Babylon, the modern day king of Babylon. All these wars and rumors of wars, and that's what they're talking about, our history. Hamas invading Israel, Israel's war against Hamas and Palestine. All these things are just a part of those wars and the rumors of wars that he sets up. Before he says, don't worry about all that. All right, this is the thing you got that you're going to worry about. Starts in chapter 15. It's a direct answer to what that question was. What's going to be the sign before the second advent? How that we'll know that it's time. That's where he picks it up with in chapter 24, verse 15. Listen to what it says. Now, you can take the Bible's word for it, or you can take some preacher's word for it. All right. But we're going to, as we go through this, let's see, can you pick up anything about a rapture or anything like this? He's going to tell you order of events. All right, and this is the big sign that you're going to see. Verse 15, "And when ye shall, therefore, shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whosoever readeth, let him understand." All right, that's parenthetical. It's been inserted in here by John, all right, and it's a direct reference to Daniel. All right, so what do we know about Daniel? All right, well, we know Daniel has the 70 weeks prophecy. All right, we also know that Daniel understood all of it up until the last week. We also understand that this week is a week of years. It's 7 years long. That's where everybody gets the idea about the tribulation period being the 7-year period of time. I'm going to go here, sit down. Let's go. All right. That's where we get it. All right. Now, he's directly referencing Daniel, and then he's telling you, whosoever readeth, let him understand. All right. So we're going to be talking about the time element. All in Daniel, all right? Now, it's 7 years. Listen to what it says. Verse 16, and then let them which be in Judea, when you see the abomination of desolation stand there, that's the desolator, that's a bad translation. It's not a condition, it's an entity that's standing there. And we've talked about this up and down sideways. This is when the Antichrist stands in Jerusalem and claims to be God, the side of the north, which was God's side, right? All right. When you see that, that's going to be your sign, all right? Then let him which is in Judea flee into the mountains. Remember last week we were talking about hail, right? Well, this is just before. When you see this happen, the next thing that's going to happen is Jerusalem gets hammered with hammer stones from space, basically. 150-pound ice chunks falling out of the sky. All right? It says, let him which is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. All right? Why? Because you're not going to need it. Second Advent's at hand at this point. All right? Neither let him which is in the field return back and take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child and them to give suck in those days. Now, here we go with spooky and scary language. All right? But what's the point to this? We've talked about this a little bit before. The whole thing is centered around the marriage supper of the Lamb, who Christ is the husbandman. Male or female were espoused to him. Okay? Now think about this. If he's gone for 2,000 years, and you come back and you have a baby and you're just giving suck to a baby, what's the one thing that the husband knows? That you've been unfaithful. All right? Now remember how many times we've been over this. Idolatry is spiritual adultery. All right? In God's eyes, there's no difference in the two. And he uses that so you can see how strong his emotions are. All right? So, because the fruit of the womb is a blessing from God. It's not, and here it sounds like it's not. It's woe to those that get sucked. But what are they doing? They're nursing along the beast in his system. All right? They're part of that fake, that espousal, or the apostasy, that falling away. All right? And that's why the warning for that, and the only warning is that way so you will understand the emotional level that's actually involved with it. Verse 20, but pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath. You can't get up in the mountains in the winter. All right, and on the Sabbath, you could only move so far each day. You couldn't get far enough away to escape the carnage that was about to be unleashed, is why. For then shall be great tribulation, as was not since the beginning of the world until this time, nor ever shall be. And except that those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days have been shortened. Now, that was the same with the elect that we talked about last week, that he's chosen from the beginning of from the foundation of the world. All right? So for those sakes, he's shortened the day, or the Antichrist would just be so convincing, all right, that no one would get through it without bearing the mark. All right? So that's big stuff. All right? And if any man shall say, this is why it says this now, if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. All right? You're not going to see him return until what? Until you have seen the abomination of desolation stand in that place where it ought not. Then you know that's your sign that you're waiting for. All right? For there shall rise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. So not just the elect as a whole, but even that 10% out of that group. And that's a pretty tight bunch right there. All right, so that tells you how convincing he'll actually be able to be in his role as Antichrist and how much power and authority he actually has. All right? Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not. For as lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even to the west, so shall also the coming of man be. Right? Why? Because when he shows up, they already think that the Messiah's in front of them. So when the second advent actually occurs, that's when the world realizes it's been deceived by this guy. All right. Now, so there's where you get the promise then to shorten the days. All right, so now let's switch over to chapter 9 in the book of Revelation. All right, because now we're going to chapter 9. Now we're getting back to where we are. We are actually on chapter 9, and this is the fifth seal, which is the first of 3 roll trumpets. All right, now we need to stay fresh on our signs, right? Remember, stars were angels, right? All right, because that's going to be a big one that you're going to see. All right, listen to what it says in chapter 9, verse 1. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. All right, so here we have a falling star. All right, it's no mystery. It's a fallen angel being kicked out of heaven. And to him was given the keys to the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. All right. Let's go back to our basic warfare. Smoke has been used on a battlefield since there's been battlefields, and it's always for the same set of reasons. It always disguises movement, conceals what's actually going on. It gives you an ability to move and shuffle assets that otherwise would be spied upon or something like that, right? So smoke. So now it's that smoke that's coming out of that pit. What's in the smoke, though? Verse 3. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. Now you see people tremble and shake, all right, because of these verses that we're talking about here in chapter 9. All right. So what are we talking about? The scorpion, all right, the scorpions of the earth. Well, how do they have power? All right, we'll get back to scorpions here in a minute. Listen to what it says. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth. The command that does not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seals of God in their forehead. Right? The people that are unaware, that have been duped, been so churched but not biblically educated enough to understand what's really going on. Okay, now you know these are not locusts. Boys, that's enough.
Yeah,
right?
The locust.
It's the locust army, right? And scorpions, they're not scorpions. There's not locusts and scorpions. But they are insects that were well known in biblical times. And they were well known for certain reasons. That's right.
Cause pain, but
that's right. A locust, man, they're attacking hordes. Yeah. All right? And when they do, they strip every green thing that they can. That's one of the reasons you know it's not locust, because they're told not to eat any green grass, right, or anything green thing, so you know it's not locust. Right? The scorpion is a scorpion, right? And it'll say more about the scorpions here in just a second. But this whole army, though, that's released that causes the smoke stream, right, can only affect people that aren't sealed, who don't have the seals of God. So break that all the way back down. Most people don't know there's going to be a second advent. And the ones that are supposed to be watching are kind of asleep. All right? So when the Antichrist appears and pulling off all these miracles, he says, here, I'm here to take you guys away from all this. All right? Well, there'll be a lot of people just falling all over themselves. Right? Most people. Because they will be going, oh my, all my life I thought, and I didn't believe. And now they don't. Now they're duped. They're duped. So we're set up really perfectly for this scenario, right? Now listen to what it says about these hurting. So what does it say? That they can only hurt them that have the seals, all those men which have not the seals of God in their forehead. And to them it was given that they should not kill them. So the Antichrist, when he shows up, he's not going to be killing anybody. He can't pull it off, I'm Jesus, if he's running around killing everybody. And that's one of the big things that most people inside of church believe. Is that the Antichrist, that if you refuse his mark, that they'll behead you on the spot. All right? That's not exactly what it's saying, right? All right. Now listen to what it says about them. They should be tormented. It says, and to them it was given that they should not kill them, but they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. Here we go back in with the scorpion. All right, the scorpion just stings people.
Makes you sick.
At the most makes you sick. Mostly just ticks you off, makes you dance around in one little spot for a little while, cussing, saying something Mama might not have been so proud of. All right? But in the end, you just keep rubbing it a little bit and you go on with life and you're fine. All right? And that's the power that he has when a scorpion striketh a man. All right? He can take you, distract you because of pain, keep you from being focused on what's going on. All right? But in the end, it's just a sting, and you start rubbing it, and you get up and you go on with your life. All right? So you can see that even by the fact that it's a scorpion when he striketh the man, there is no power in a scorpion when he striketh the man except, this is going to sting a little bit. All right? So even with them, then, there's nothing to be feared for either way. So they're bound. You can't touch, you can't kill anybody that bears the mark of the beast, and you can't even lay one hair on the head of somebody who realizes that the Antichrist is the Antichrist, all right, instead of Jesus. All right? It's a real simple scenario when you get to really looking at it. And then, but unfortunately, what we've done is from pulpits have muddied the water so bad that even the book itself is hard to understand because of it, because of those things. But it seems it's pretty straightforward. Verse 6, and in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. Now, it sure sounds like you won't be able to die, but that's not what's going on. They're seeking death as an angel. It's the angel of death. It's the Antichrist, our enemy, the one from the beginning of time. All right? He's the angel of the death, and they're going to be looking for him. Why? Because they think Jesus is standing in front of them, and they want to find out, root out the devil. I've been hearing that used a lot lately in politics. We're going to root out communism, atheism, and these things. Man, it's starting to sound scary to me about this rooting out stuff. But nonetheless, that's too political. But nonetheless, they're not. You'll be able to die, but you won't be able to find the bad side. It'll look like it's all happiness and roses, because the good side's right in your face. All right? Verse 7, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. All right? And on their heads were, as it were, crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. So there you go. They look like people. All right? Why? Because it is. It's made up of flesh, men and women, fallen angels, and demonic spirits. All right? Something seeking embodiment. That's really what the only difference between an angelic creature and the demon is the fact that a demonic spirit is unembodied, either in a spiritual body or in a flesh one. All right. Now, and on their heads were as the crowns like gold. Didn't say it was gold, just looks like it, right? And they had the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of a woman, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. So that's what they're. Flesh men and women look pretty, look all holy.
Carrying huge swords.
Yeah, right.
Teeth
right.
of lions. Usually teeth refers to daggers.
Teeth
of some kind.
Well, just take the way a lion attacks. All right, like a lioness. First of all, it's a female that comes after you. All right, and they might jump on something, but eventually one of them's getting a hold of a throat.
Yeah.
And once they get a hold of that throat, they just sit there and hold until the animal's dead, while the rest of them eat it alive. All right, kind of gruesome, but that's kind of the point that he wants. That this place, that what's going on at this time, looks so holy, but yet it's leading people to literally their death. And that's the veracity. That's the way God looks at it. That these people do it. They look so pretty, but yet what they're doing is killing everybody around them. All right, and they had breastplates, as it were, breastplates of lion. Of iron. It wasn't the one made out of gold with all the stones that their priests are supposed to have, right? This is just iron, because they're formed for war, all right? And the sounds of their wings was the sounds of chariots of many horses running into battle. Now, let your mind go all the way back to Ezekiel. That's exactly the same idea of many waters falling, a big, massive roar, and we know what was going on in Ezekiel, right? All right, verse 10, and they had tails as like unto scorpions, and they were stingers in their tails, and their power was to hurt man 5 months. Again, it's repeated again. That's 2 times for emphasis, right? Now, if you ever wondered who was in charge of it, well, here you go. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. All Either way, no matter what language, it's still a destroyer. It's still the destroyer, the same destroyer that we had back when we were dealing with the Exodus.
Same destroying angel.
Yeah, same destroying angel, right. The angel of death is what is even called there. All right? So that's a give me. There's only one character in the whole biblical theology that fits that, and that's the destroyer, and that's Lucifer himself, correct. All right? So what do we understand? From the time that the smoke screen goes up, the time that all these things goes on, their power to hurt man was only for 5 months.
And it's
All right? Yeah.
That's sealed.
It starts out, now remember back in Matthew and Mark, that was the thing. He said, let him to read this, understand about Daniel. 7 years there. All right, but for the elect's sake, it's shortened. And here in chapter 9, that's where they draw it down. That's that whole point. This is known as the Great Tribulation. It's the time from the Antichrist shows up until the actual second advent.
Yeah.
All right, and it's only a matter of a few months. So 7 years versus a few months. You can hold your own for a few months against just about anything with heart and determination. And they're not going to have that, because if you believe what God says and you're sealed, He's not mad at you anyway. And the example that you see that you have for Israel when God's not mad at them, no hail fell on them, ground that bubbles up quail, you have manna from heaven. So somebody that's sealed is not going to have a problem in those 5 months. So there's a lot of people that think that it's just pain and despair for anybody who's here, but it doesn't sound like it to me. Matter of fact, it says quite the opposite, that it's been planned from the beginning, that for people to do these things, that everything you need has been prepared for you from there. That's what it says. All right? And that would apply to anybody who, whether they're called or whether they're chosen, as long as they will listen. That's the thing. All right? Listen to what it says about this. That's one woe. Verse 12, one woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. One of which was the actual last one, which is the second advent. All right, and that woe, I bet that woe doesn't last 10 seconds. It'll be quick, right, exactly. Verse 13, and the 6th angel sounded, so we're all the way into the 6s now, all right? And I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the 6th angel which had the trumpet, loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. Now, if you notice, you pick up online, you get a lot of chatter about the Euphrates River's dried up. I don't know what its current status is, but that was for a long time. Yeah. So there you go. There's your simple. Okay, now what's been loosed? There are 4 spirits that have been loosed. And listen to what it says about them. And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, a day, a month, and a year to slay a third part of men. Okay, anytime you get that arrangement in time, that means the prepared moment. Whatever that's supposed to happen, that's when it's going to actually happen. All right, so here you have 4 demonic forces that are loosed upon the rest of the earth, and according to what the sign that we get is the dry Euphrates River. All right, so that's happened. And you wonder what's going on? Well, look around the world. I mean, you have like the Hamas who murdered children, but yet you have people who are saying that these are good, that this was a good thing. We're confused about what's right and what's wrong in a great many ways. Now, all these conditions are brought about by these 4 right here. And I would imagine it probably, just about anything you could put world in front of, like world education, world religion, world politics, world finance, right? Those are big things. Those are the big powers that be. And that's actually kind of supported by Daniel in the first part of Daniel, if you actually look at what's going on there. But nonetheless, those 4 beasts are released. Verse 16, and the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000 thousands. I heard the number of them. That's a bunch. I can't do that math, but that's a bunch. It sure make it look like it's almost infinite. It sure looks like they'll have more help than they would ever need by that number, right? And thus I saw the horses in the vision. Here we go again with horses. And them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and japheth and brimstone. And the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire, smoke, and brimstone. Right? And it came out of their mouth, right? And it's by these three were the third part of men killed by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouth. It's the whole smoke screen is not what they're seeing, it's what they're saying. All right, and here we go back to that theme again. I'm Christ, I'm here, look at these miracles, I'm here to take you away. All right, it's that simple. All right. Verse 19, and their power was in their mouths, just like we were saying, and in their tails, which they can just sting with, right? And for their tails were like unto serpents, and the heads, and with them they do hurt. Right? So here, go all the way back to the serpent. We know who's in charge of that. All right? And the rest of the men, which were not killed by the plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, and they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, and neither concede nor hear nor walk, neither repented of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornications, nor of their thefts. All right, now, let's cover that real quick. All right, first of all, you have a group here that is still refusing to bear the mark, actually, is what you're actually saying. All right? So some of them that did refuse and others don't. All right, but listen to what it says. But neither repented of murders, nor sorceries, nor their fornications, nor their thefts. This can get overlooked. The murders that they're talking about is that deception. Like, you remember your father will betray their wife or a daughter to death during this time, right? And that's spiritual murder. That's somebody who didn't believe this bad bear, but you're interceding in their life, putting them in a position, right? So that's the murders that they're talking about. Now, sorceries, people like to talk about how the horoscope and this and that and all these things are sorceries. This word here in Greek is pharmacia, all right, and it means a druggist. All right, so it's no doubt talking about the drug culture that we all are absorbed in. I mean, not just illegal and illicit drugs, but how about any different drugs do we take? What's billions are spent for bloating, acid, indigestion, headache medicine, all based on problems with diet.
Yeah.
All right? So not just I'm just saying it ain't just about the drug addicts, your crackheads, or your things like that. There's a lot of drugs that are used in our day-to-day life that are just because of conditions of what we eat. Which goes completely against what the Bible recommends for guidelines for food most often. I mean, that's from somebody who's been inside the restaurant industry a long, long time. I mean, but then the fornication, well, what fornication are we talking about? It's just same adultery, right? It's just apostasy that's occurring before that. All right? You remember where the thefts were?
Yeah.
The thefts, were the tithes. He was accusing them. Well, you're stealing from me. And they said, well, how are we stealing from you? And the tithes and offerings. Right? Because they're claiming the right to a tithe that only belongs to a Levite who we don't even know where they are. All right? And it just takes a little bit of Bible work to sort that out. But, so my point is, when you read that, there's a lot more than just what it says. Murder, sorcerers, fornication, and thefts. Right? That means things. And that was exactly what he's getting at. All those things, out of that comes a recompense in this generation with us. All right. So that's what I wanted you to get out of chapter 9 more than anything, was the timeline. We hear the words, I've heard it put this in my way in my life quite often, that I heard the words, but I didn't understand what they meant. And they always say, oh, well, they promised to shorten the time, but then how's the time shortened to where? And to what? And why? And all those questions are answered in chapter 9, to include who the locust army is, all about the scorpions, all about the great apostasy. All that occurs and all is covered actually in chapter 9. Right? And that's one of my go-to lessons. If you're only going to get with somebody one time, it's a good chapter to cover with people. But any questions?
No, I think it's kind of crazy how many different roles Lucifer plays.
Right.
That was another deception he put was in the Word by creating so many roles for himself.
That's right.
It's confusing us.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
I always say it.
I'm starting to come to terms with that and understand that a little more, and that got to me really during this one with the Abaddon.
Right, Abaddon and Apollyon, right.
Yeah, because
that's
it's
right.
another role.
That's right.
That being the angel that flew over took the first one.
That's right. That's just a death
Not only
angel.
do
It's
you do
just,
that,
but
somebody
that
with
one.
pure
That's
evil.
right. That's right. And that's where you got to get that idea from. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. We muddy it up by
It
we
is, and it's a
we muddy it up.
translation,
Yeah,
and then individual translations of pastors.
yeah, right.
people
And then
talking, and yeah.
I think the biggest thing that kills us in the book, well, anywhere in the Bible, is that it's verse. When you talk to somebody and you say something on the grid, they go, "What's the verse?"
Yeah,
I'm like,
that's annoying. Yeah, it really is.
Okay, you can start here in this one, but
Yeah,
you're gonna
but
need
you're
this
gonna
whole
have to go,
chapter.
yeah. And
It's
then this
all
chapter
about
is
this.
another book,
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. Man, I can't. That's hard to get people away from is verse. The only thing I can equate it to is like when you join the Marine Corps, you're in lap mode. Is what they tell you. You're in lap mode right now, but by the time you get done with all this, you're in mile mode. You don't worry about how many laps you ran, how many miles you've already covered. All right, then Bible's like that. It really is, and you get dug into it, and you get moved out of lap mode and more into mile mode, and you see that there's a whole big.
Yeah. And
There's
with the New Testament too, they all knew each other. They're all saying the same thing in their own frame of
That
mind.
they're on right.
And you've got to take that into account too. That if you
That's
take it
right.
as a whole there too.
That's
and
right.
Combine different perspectives and
The
stuff.
the four gospels you have, that is the
Yeah.
thing is completely different is perspective.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
perspective.
And,
yeah.
and what all of them are saying are true, but
Yeah,
it was
but
that
it
was
was
what
just
they got out
what
of
they
it.
got,
Yeah,
yeah,
and then
to
this
get a
one got
whole-
this out of that.
To get a whole
Right.
story,
You
have
need
to
all of it.
respect all of it.
All of it. That's right.
So I'm starting to get that. So it's cool.
Yeah, it's now, and you cannot understand this book of Revelation unless you have Genesis and Exodus under your belt.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense unless you understand what they're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, and when you got that, that gives you some stuff to work with. All right, you guys have fun.